How can there be innumerable theories but still no breakthrough? That's what we're going to dwell on over the next 20 odd minutes. Joining us this evening, good evening, Air Vice Marshal retired Kapil and also Mirza Faizan, aviation expert, joining us live from Texas. And of course, Kashif Khusro, our correspondent, joining us from Kuala Lumpur. He's been tracking the developments. Times Now, the only Indian news channel down on ground, getting you the updates live. Kashif, first to you. Can you take us through what's transpired over the last few days that you've been there? And how is it that every day it's a new theory, but no breakthrough?
Let's start with what we know as of now, what is on record, what the Malaysian authorities have told us. One, we know that this aircraft took off from Kuala Lumpur towards Beijing. Somewhere between in the South China Sea, it took an air turn back. It turned towards the state of Malacca. From there onwards, the military radar spotted it nearly 1 hour after it was lost on the civilian radars. After that, that was at 2:17 a.m. in the morning, and after that it has gone missing, and from then on we do not know what has happened. The Prime Minister last Saturday came up with saying that there was a deliberate attempt to switch off the aircraft systems, the communication systems, so that it could not be detected. After that, the police, the civil aviation authorities, as well as foreign intelligence agencies have been investigating, trying to figure out where this aircraft could possibly go. The Prime Minister indicated there were 2 arcs stretching across Central Asia to the southern Indian Ocean. Now, the amount of information they have, the amount of data or rather amount of areas to cover at this moment has made so many theories around floating and so many questions posed to the Malaysian authorities every day by at least 300 to 400 journalists here, but none of the answers are coming out from the authorities because they themselves are saying they do not know anything what could have happened to the big bird.
Okay, so, and there are many theories abounding right now. Of course, that entire hijack angle has been thrown open by certain revelations that have come through now. Let's go across to Mirza Faizan, who's joining us from Texas. Mirza, you know, the basic question here, which everybody's asking, is how something as huge as a Boeing 777 can fly halfway across Asia without being detected. Those 2 arcs that Kashif was talking about, they cover huge territory and several countries. How can it go into that flying zone without being detected?
Tina, first of all, an aircraft disappearing is not a new incident. There has been 120 aircraft disappearance since the time we have started flying, maybe 100 years or so. The interesting thing about this incident is that the aircraft as big as Boeing 777, which is fitted with state-of-art avionics systems, communication systems, and you know it has disappeared. Now, one thing which I just fail to understand is there are theories which say that there has been system has been switched off and aircraft has been taken in control. Now, if the system has been switched off, what are the civil air defense radars and the military radars around the vicinity doing there? Now, there are a lot of civil defense radars and military radars around the area, and they just they didn't.
No, but that's what it says, that as soon as the aircraft moved into Vietnamese zone and flew out of Malaysian airspace, it just entered a Vietnamese airspace. It was more or less in no man's land, which is when the ACAR system seems to have been shut down. That points to a deliberate action.
The failure of a car system, that aircraft communication addressing and reporting system, can happen due to other electrical failure also, and not deliberately. I still do not believe in the theory of a deliberate action, because if someone would have done this deliberate action, there has been some reactions across the world, but nothing has come as of today. So I still do not believe on this deliberate action. There can be many systems. If the way the aircraft has disappeared, one thing is very, very clear is that whatever happened to the aircraft must have happened very, very fast and within a fraction of a second. Now, there are certain scenarios, as far as aerospace structures goes, there are certain scenarios where this can happen. First is rapid decompression. Due to a structural failure, if a rapid decompression happens, It is very, very similar to an onboard bomb explosion. The aircraft will disintegrate and plunge into a dive into the sea, and the entire cabin will be filled with smoke, so that pilots, cannot react, and the aircraft can disintegrate and dive into the sea. So that can be one scenario.
You know what, Mirza Faizan, the fact is that when you're talking about these theories, if there was a distress issue, why switch off all the signals? And how come there is nothing, no wreckage, nothing to be found? Let's say good evening to David Cleave, aviation expert, joining us from London. The Boeing 777, Air Vice Marshal Kapil, I'll just come to you in a bit. Quick question to David Cleave. It's a Boeing 777 aircraft, and it says that a big bird like that, if we were to go by the latest theory floated by the Malaysian authorities, that it flew as low as 5,000 feet to avoid detection, cannot fly more than 800 miles, even if it is full tank at that altitude. So it has to be somewhere in that region. How is it it's not been found?
Well, the aircraft may have tried to evade radar. Alternatively, it's just outside radar coverage anyway. You can, if you get around Indonesia, you can get quite a long way with no radar coverage at all. There's no reason to fly down at 5,000 feet if there is no radar cover at 30,000 feet. Once you're 250 miles from land, then you're beginning to get outside radar cover at an altitude of 30,000 feet. And that assumes that you've got the radar mounted on the coast.
But then
you'd really be looking to mount radars high up to get a longer range.
But then you can't sustain yourself in the air for more than 7 hours, so you have to land somewhere, and there are 239 people on board. So if you discount the 2 pilots and the sabotage angle and some devious motives, 10 days on, no word?
Well, it's very, very unusual, which is why a lot of people are considering that the crew have taken the aeroplane, rather than passengers hijacking the aeroplane for a financial ransom or a political gain or a religious statement.
Well, those are one of the some of the theories that are, of course, being proposed. If we can just go to Air Vice Marshal Kapil now. Mirza Faizan was talking about one of the theories, which is that it has disintegrated. There's been rapid decompression, and then the plane could have disintegrated. But what about the fact that the plane slipped off the Malaysian civilian radar, as we know, at about 1:30 a.m., but it continued to blip on military radars until much later, which is 2:15 a.m. What does that mean? That means that even after all the transponder and the ACAR system and everything had gone off, if it was still bleeping on the military radars, it was still going somewhere.
Tina, you put it absolutely right. The aircraft has, obviously, there has been some pilot interference, either an intruder or one of the flight crew, or the pilots themselves, either together or singly, having disabled the other pilot. That seems plausible because ACARS has been switched off within about 25 minutes of its takeoff. 10 minutes later, the transponder, which paints it on the ATC radars in Malaysia and other ATC radars, also has been switched off.
And in between those two switched off, the pilot had apparently given one final voice communication saying, "All right, good night." That happened between the ACAR shutdown and the transponder shutdown.
No. That's happened. No, I'll put the timings right. It took off at 00:14, 12:14.
Yeah.
25 minutes later, at 5 minutes past 1, it switched off the ACARS. 15 minutes later, it switched off the transponder. And at 1:30, it made the announcement, "All right, good night," and so on. After that, you see, ACARS has been switched off, but there is also aircraft control management system, which is a function of ACARS, which can't be switched off. That's what is beeped to the satellite, the engine state, and the fact that the engine of the aircraft ran, both engines ran, for 6 hours after his last contact. So it's not disintegrated. It can't. If it disintegrates, the engines disintegrate. So the point is, there is some sabotage angle, there is a terror angle in which the cockpit, whether it's the pilots, whether it's some intruder, hijacker, who knows Airbus, who knows Boeing 777-200ER very well, because a pilot has to know the system. There is also a flight plan correlation that the Malaysian Air Force radars at Kota Baru and Butterworth have actually picked up the tracks. And that's what the Malaysian Air Force chief said it on Wednesday following the Saturday disappearance. So we are looking at a whole lot of... I agree entirely with my British colleague who said that it doesn't have to do terrain masking. There are no radars, civilian radars, which can pick it up because the transponder are off. And Air Force radars per force are not on 24/7. Whether it's the Malaysian Air Force or the Indian Air Force or any other Air Force, they are on as required basis dependent on the threat geometry in that particular sector. It does appear a stunningly mysterious disappearance caused by cockpit interference, and the flight as it has gone, it's even, I mean, not to talk about 5,000 feet, but even varying altitudes. It's climbed to 45, then come to 23, then settled at 29,000 feet when it was last reported at 2:15 in the morning of Saturday. So I think from the looks of it, thereafter nobody knows where the aircraft has gone.
So now you strongly believe,
my belief,
you strongly believe, sir, that there is a sabotage angle and a cockpit interference. Let's go across to Kashif once again. He's been down on ground there. They are exploring the angle of sabotage and the interference by the pilots, isn't it? We've also done our fair bit of groundwork there. Kashif, can you take our viewers through as to what have the Malaysian authorities gleaned so far about the two pilots, and does the needle of suspicion stop at them? Or are they still not convinced?
Well, I want to start with the Malaysian authorities couldn't agree with Kapil more. I mean, in fact, what he is saying right now is what exactly the Malaysian authorities are saying. The two pilots, their houses were raided. There was a flight simulator in the commander's house, which was in fact taken out from his house and brought to the police headquarters and assembled again, and that was completely checked. The co-pilot's antecedents were checked, and now we are hearing from the Malaysian authorities that a flight engineer on board that flight who knew the aircraft very well, and he knew also how to fly an aircraft, his antecedents are also under scrutiny. Now, this flight engineer wanted to leave the airline, this is Malaysian airline, and go to Beijing for a new job. That is under scrutiny now, and the Malaysian investigators have also a third suspect. Remember, the first time the police chief spoke about the terrorism angle and saying that the Malaysian Penal Code has been applied as a terrorist act. He said that all the passengers, 239 of them, including the 12 crew, are a suspect, and they are making sure that all the background checks are being conducted. But imagine the diplomatic and the political angle to it, where all these checks have to be conducted from nationalities across. There are Chinese, there are Indians, there are Indonesians, Europeans.
But when you say that,
nationalities, and to do that will be the key to this modern day Flying Dutchman mystery.
Yes, it is, and it's a Houdini act that has happened. And David Cleave, if we go by all the logic that you have said, Kapil Kak has said, and what Kashif is telling us, 9.5 days on, 6 hours flight, it has landed somewhere, right? There has been no contact, no claim for ransom, because 237 people are there, including the two, plus the two pilots. Somebody has to make some call, isn't it? There is no distress call either. So what's happening?
It would be very unusual for the aircraft to have landed somewhere safely, nobody to have switched on their mobile phone and received an interrogation message from the mobile phone provider. Every airport has a mobile phone mast somewhere, and even if it had been hijacked, somebody would have tried to hide a mobile phone to switch it on later on. So it would be very unusual for the US military not to be able to track everybody on board the aeroplane from their mobile phones. We still have one issue to discuss, and that's the possibility that somebody on board the aeroplane took the aircraft and crashed it deliberately into the Indian Ocean. And that could be for any political purpose, but there's been no claim. Or also the possibility of suicide, and if you cannot determine which passenger or crew member or any person on board the aircraft it was, then the insurance companies will probably pay out.
Okay, if we can just go across now to Mirza Faizan again on that. Mirza Faizan, if we go by that, that theory, that's one of the theories that is certainly being discussed. Why has there been no debris, no fuel slick? If the plane has been deliberately perhaps hijacked or flown off course and then crashed, would there be any telltale signs? Does the black box work all, that many kilometers under the sea surface? Would there be any telltale sign at all?
See, if I assume that the aircraft has been hijacked and has been taken off course, now the amount of region which we are actually searching right now is very, very broad. Now, as far as debris is concerned, let me tell you, if an aircraft cruising at a speed of, say, 900 km per hour, which Boeing 777 is capable to cruise, and if it nosedives into the ocean, into the sea, now at that speed, the water appears as hard as a concrete or a granite, and which can result in the rapid disintegration of the aircraft. Let me give you an example of Silk Air, crash of Silk Air Flight 185, which has crashed into the sea, and the debris which was found none of the debris was more than 40 centimeters, bigger than 40 centimeters. So the debris disintegrated very fast, and into small pieces and might have gone down.
Okay.
And the other reason we are not able to find is that the aircraft has deviated from its course, of course.
Well, it has, but Mr. Kak, if somebody deliberately crashed the plane and if there was sabotage, will somebody remain silent for 10 days and not claim that they are responsible for it?
No. Anand, that's the point. You see, we have seen that aircraft has flown for nearly 7 hours after that last position report, and we have known the track plots. Most likely the aircraft has crashed into the sea. Unfortunately, the Malaysian authorities haven't, credited themselves with some professionalism.
Yes.
Because on the very day this accident took place, the Malaysian chief went to Butterworth and said the track plots have tracked this aircraft in the Malacca Straits. And yet for one long week, the entire ships, the whole lot of aircraft was searching the Gulf of Thailand, because somehow the attempt was made to withhold this information, to be only confirmed by the Prime Minister the day before, when on Saturday he held a press conference. In that 1 week, to go back to the point made by my colleague earlier, if it has crashed in the Indian Ocean, the debris, small pieces, would have scattered hundreds of kilometers away. Because we lost the international community lost the most valuable resource in this situation, and that was time.
Absolutely.
Thanks to the somewhat, below par professionalism of the Malaysian authorities, discordant, leads not followed, correlations not done, and communications with the international community, the passengers, almost hopeless. And that is primarily the cause.
David Gleave, if we can just come to you on that, what is to be made of the contradictory accounts that were sort of given forth by the Malaysian authorities? I mean, just to go through some of them, initially they issued a statement saying Flight MH370 had vanished from radar at 2:40. This was a statement that was later corrected to 1:30. And then there were several contradictory statements made about the stolen passports, the appearance of the men. It was initially claimed the location. Then somebody came out and completely contradicted that. What is to be made of, as Kapil Kak said, the time that was lost amidst all this confusion?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that they have to go off facts, and it takes a considerable period of time to process radar data accurately from military radars to determine exactly the type of aircraft that was there. You may assess it as a threat or not as far as the military are concerned, but to actually identify it as a 777-200 takes some radar processing time. There's also a degree of shock and things like that the people have to deal with, that this could happen within their country. Yes, they open up an investigation. A standard investigation has 21 different lines of investigation. Then you have the security aspects of the investigation. So it doesn't surprise me that we look at 30 different things on the first day, and we start to discount things as we get some proof of real evidence.
Okay.
I think the other thing to also add to the conversation at this point is it's possible to crash the aeroplane into the sea without leaving any wreckage if you plan to do it in advance and think about it. So you wouldn't necessarily power dive the aircraft into the sea or pancake it, but there are ways of doing it with the minimum amount of wreckage to be left that could float.
Right, and let's go across to
I think that any pilot who really put their mind to it could.
Yeah. Right, David, we'll just quickly go across to our correspondent joining us from Kuala Lumpur at this point. The issue is loss of time is also because the Malaysian authorities were a bundle of contradictions, isn't it? If there was information as early as Wednesday about the possibility of the craft going towards a different direction in the Straits of Malacca or on that region, why did they have to wait until the weekend, in fact till today, to confirm that? And they've been contradicting each other, different voices from the Malaysian government, isn't it, Kashif?
Yes, the contradictions are so diverse, Anand, and yes, if there was the debris, the oil slick, all of that would be available to the authorities now. Let me explain to you a little figuratively and for the benefit of our viewers. The earlier search was divided only over here in the Gulf of Thailand in the South China Sea. But as soon as there were reports by the Air Force that there was an air turn back, then only some assets were then deployed here in the Straits of Malacca, between Indonesia and between Malaysia. This is the Strait of Malacca here. But later on, when the Air Force confirmed that there were reports that it had indeed turned back, and then it flew for 7 hours after the last point in contact, then the search extended towards the Andaman Sea here, and then it went right up to here, touching the shores of India in the Bay of Bengal. But that was again almost 6 to 7 days after the initial reports that the aircraft went missing. Finally, on Saturday last, when the Prime Minister took the press conference,
We'll just go back to Kashif in just a bit, but Mirza Faizan, do you believe that the Malaysian authorities are withholding some information, and why the reluctance to take extensive international help? They refused America. They're not very happy with the Chinese interference. China is not very happy with the way Malaysia has gone about the entire investigation process. Do you believe valuable time has been lost?
Anand, before answering your question, I'd like to narrate air accident way back in 1980. I'm talking about Italia Flight 870, which crashed on Mediterranean, and no one claimed responsibility, and it was assumed that the aircraft has crashed into the sea. Whereas the fact was, the aircraft was hit by a missile which was fired by a French military aircraft, and till last year, till 2013, no one claimed any responsibility, and last year, Italian Supreme Court has proved it with the help of the investigator that this plane has indeed been hit by a French aircraft missile. Now, that is one cover-up which has happened in the past. So there could be a possibility. This is a possibility. We cannot, deny that there are some cover-ups from Malaysian government, because the way they have been changing their stances, the way they have been changing the facts, appears slightly suspicious to me.
Kapil Kak, if you can just tell us whether you think that there is possibly a theory which no one's looking at. Just concluding comments on this.
No, the theories range from disintegration to pilot suicide in pushing it into the sea. But the stunning mystery is, why would they want to fly for 7 hours before putting it into the sea when he had just reported Igaru at 1:30, and within 5 minutes he could have pushed himself into the Gulf of Thailand? There is obviously something far deeper, and we are not anywhere near that clue to the truth. I think it will take months, it may take years, we may never know whatever happened to MH370. There are 82 cases from 1948 onwards in world civil aviation that aircraft have not been found. 82 aircraft from 1948 onwards. The vast expanse which has to be now recceed and surveyed will take a lot of effort. I would not be surprised if the efforts are called off in a week or so and this case is forgotten. Because the way it has unfolded, 7 hours of flying, so many deviations in track, pilot behavior being very hugely suspect, the terror angle, all these put together is going to make this hugely problematic in terms of getting to the truth of whatever happened to MH370.
Amazing, isn't it, in this day and age of technology and when everybody is watching over everybody, that such a big bird goes unnoticed and it's undetected for 10 long days. Many theories on the one side, and the issue of closure. What about the families of those 239 people who are on board? They will not get closure till they know the outcome and the details about this missing plane. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us on the News Hour tonight.